Good morning, everyone. Okay, here we go. Today we're going to conclude the essay by um, Heike, Weis, Hyder, entitled "The Burning Urgency of Psychodynamic Discoveries in the Red Book for Psychiatry and Psychotherapy, a Key for Healing Resonance of Soul, Love, and Life." And we are in the last portion of this very comprehensive essay, which is, um, morning, Kathy. Nice to see you. Good morning, Art. Uh, so today, as usual, I'm reading from Jung's Red Book for Our Time, Searching for Soul Under Postmodern Conditions by Mary Stein and Thomas Arst, editors. It's published by Chiron Publications. And I think in order to set the stage here properly, I need to go back one segment to a segment of this essay entitled "The Need of the Soul." And I'm just going to read through this for openers. The most important psychodynamic discovery in the Red Book is, in my view, experience in the unfolding visions of the scrutinies, especially when Jung's soul wants to steal human love. Her craving enrages him because the soul is longing for the warm human love, blood, warm red blood, the holy source of life, the unification of everything separated and longed for. Sounds a little bit like a vampire. Maybe this is where the idea of the vampire came from. I don't know. Anyway, Jung wants to protect human love in the face of the gods and their power because they exercise neither limits nor mercy, having neither God nor soul presiding over them as their judges. Jung's, Jung insists that human love stay with humans. In the unfolding dialogue with his soul, he demands that she participate with humanity on behalf of humility and for the sake of love to honor humankind. With Jung's full conscious intention, and only after strenuous confrontation pressuring his soul, she laments and yields. She agrees to set herself to work on behalf of humanity, but proposes that Jung build a furnace to transform the rejected matter of human existence, a vessel to work on concretizations and integrations, a container in which the human path of becoming whole might live. A few a new form of therapy is born, healing in resonance with the psyche, not of the psyche. Science is consciousness. The building of this furnace, a therapeutic vessel, should become an ongoing task and treasure for psychiatrists and psychotherapists. Okay, so we're talking about building a vessel for healing. And I'm gonna, so, okay. Um, so the two more segments to this essay. The first one, let me just check here. Okay. Okay. So the meaning of the Red Book for Modern Psychiatry and Psychotherapy, and you can feel free to chime in if you wish. Just set up my visage properly. If you're wondering what the orange thing around my neck is, it's a whistle. And obviously, whistles have a certain political content today, but also we are having icy conditions in my neighborhood, and I fell in front of my dumpster with without a whistle the other day, and I was having great difficulty getting up. I finally did get up, but nobody helped me, and so I'm going to wear this whistle around my neck when I'm out. So, the meaning of the Red Book for Modern Psychiatry and Psychotherapy. Uh, Kathy says, "Good for you that you got the plastic one. What's the significance of the plastic one as opposed to a metal one? Although I think if I had a metal one around my neck, it might stick to my lips if I put it to my lips in this icy conditions. Our current temperature where I live is 16 degrees, and that's Fahrenheit. So that's about 10 degrees minus in Celsius. So yeah. So metal whistles, I'm going to order mine today. Metal ones get cold, they can freeze and malfunction, and I assume if you put them to your lips when they're icy, you could stick it to your lips and rip part of your skin off. All right, reading on. The meaning of the Red Book for Modern Psychiatry and Psychotherapy. The initiation into the experience and knowledge of psychodynamics in the Red Book demonstrates that the ability to connect is essential for the development of consciousness and healing. Having prescribed the Red Book to some of my patients, several have found it to be a direct support for their own path. However, generally, lay people need an introduction into its dynamics in order to be able to embrace the value for themselves. In lectures and seminars that I have given about the Red Book, it was impressive to realize how deeply people are touched by the message that psyche is relational and that there are ways of growing out of impasses and suffering. With, with himself as his With himself and his patients, Jung made many observations that the phenomenon of psyche unfolds in an ongoing process through relational, associative, and felt experiences within oneself and the world. Noting also that the relation of the ego to the unconscious and its contents triggers a metamorphosis of the psyche, naturally opened the idea of a growing humanization in people, which he later termed the process of individuation. I'm going to read that once more because I just to make sure you get that sentence all together. Noting also that the relation of the ego toward the unconscious and its contents triggers a metamorphosis of the psyche, naturally opened the idea of a growing humanization in people, which he later termed the process of individuation. Individuation is an unconscious, teleological, instinctual movement taking place through the course of a lifetime, emerging from an unconscious center, which Jung called the self. The individual is is created as a semi-autonomous entity, constantly seeking to balance divergent energies within. The conscious realization of this process is transforming when the ego, undergoing conflicts or pathologies, discovers that there is a living inner source constellating new attitudes through the mediation of symbols, so long as a personal, caring relationship with the source is undertaken. Becoming conscious of the Becoming conscious of the individuation process is at the same time disillusioning because it does not transport one to an impossible state of happiness, but rather helps one patiently to acquire resilience and sometimes eventual resolution in the face of suffering. Okay, so it seems to me this is a very important aspect of this. Um, and the traditional way of communicating with the unconscious, although people weren't aware that that's what they were doing, was through prayer. And so prayer was something that developed over thousands of years. And people thought that they were communicating with a um, marionette master up there rather than communicating with their own unconscious. And it worked, and it's worked for thousands of years. But now, because the bulwark of Christianity or of Judaism, what have you, any religion has kind of failed since the Enlightenment. Um, Therefore, we need another way to think about it. And that's what one of Jung's big innovations in psychology and psychiatry, which is that these things are going on within you. They're not going on out there or out there talking to you or any other such thing. And so this is a very important point to keep in mind. Um, so Deborah Curtis says an AI type of quasi Jung channel came into my feed yesterday concerning individuation. I watched some of it, but it was very basic. Yeah, well, there are a lot of people working with Jungian psychology now. When I started this YouTube channel some 10 years ago now, um, there was nobody. Uh, and so shortly after I started, a few um, Jungian analysts started to uh, create their own channel as analysts, which is fine. Um, and I don't claim to be an analyst. I never want to be an analyst. I can't imagine anything more difficult than be hanging out in the psyche of another human being. And if you have a lot big clientele, uh, hanging out in 6 or 7 or 8 hours a day in different psyches would be, oh boy, so hard for your own psyche, I would think. Um, and so it seems to me that the AI Jung channel can be useful, but it's best if you know what you're doing with it, because in the end, it's not human and it's not you. And what Jung was looking for is what is your center. And an AI channel could very easily lead you down a garden path, it seems to me, and maybe not be very helpful, maybe be worse than nothing. And so I think we should be judicious about the use of AI. I think it can be helpful and it can get you started Um, and then you need to find your own path, whatever that may be. Everybody has a path. And what is the path we're talking about? It's the path of getting through life with a healthful psyche and with a helpful psychology in healthful psychology within you. And so, however you do that, uh, it can be writing songs or, even this loud blaring stuff that they sell through the Grammys every year now. Um, that can get the process started. It seems to me that it's not very satisfying in the end. It's rather immature because um, sexuality and that sort of thing are important in the first half of life, especially for um, young adults to find a mate and have a family. But once that process has achieved its necessary end, then you have to figure out what you're going to do with the rest of your life and who you really are, and that's the important thing. Um, right. Deborah says it's uncanny how the AI stuff selects for you. The AI art is always horrible. AI can be a starting point, true, but people can get misled. Yes, I think so because I used to know a man who I called Bill Gates East, and he was the most brilliant intellect I ever knew. And he had been national collegiate champion in speed chess. Now, speed chess is a chess game that is complete in 10 minutes between the two parties. So you have to move very quickly. And obviously he knew some tricks and was able to dominate in that. And I honor his intellect because he could do that. But the problem is that um, people wiggle just a little bit more than chess pieces. And so think, yes, a chess game can have billions of moves, sure, a couple billion moves, I guess, but it's on 64 squares, and the chess pieces can only move in a certain way and not any other way. But think about how much more complex the uh, a human life is, and how our interactions with one another are so much more complex than what pieces face. And so it seems to me AI is kind of like that. It's trying to play chess when we're living in a complex world that's um, way more complex than AI can ever appreciate properly. And maybe on some things it's okay to get a start, but ultimately you are going to be you, and your psyche is going to individuate no matter what you do, and your chess pieces, your AI can't predict that. It really knows nothing about your environment or who you are, how you fit in. Um, so anyway, so I'm going to read on with this. Okay, I'm going to let's see. I go back. I forget where I left off here. So The conscious realization of the process is transforming when the ego, undergoing conflicts or pathologies, discovers that there is a living inner source, contemplating new attitudes through the mediation of symbols, so long as a personal, caring relationship with the source is undertaken. Becoming conscious of the individuation process is at the same time disillusioning because it does not transport one to an impossible state of happiness, but rather helps one patiently to acquire resilience and sometimes eventual resolution in the face of suffering. And so I can easily point to my experience in the Naval Academy Chapel as doing just that. I was very upset one day and I went into the Naval Academy Chapel. I'm going to show you these pictures, and most of you have seen them multiple times, but um, I was very upset and very depressed, and a symbol happened. I mean, the in the chapel, it was quite dark that day, and here's what happened. I was sitting there alone, and all of a sudden, I look up, and here's this light, and it's like shining right on me. And I go, and that was a symbol for me because I had seen similar lights used in movies uh, and such, and so I recognized it as something that was um, beyond me. I don't know that I thought of it as God, perhaps, but it was certainly a numinous experience. And I took one look at this and I said, "Oh my God, nobody's going to ever believe this unless I take a picture of it." So I then turned the camera back on myself and did the selfie just to show you how dark it was in the chapel and how I was the only thing that was lit up in the scene. And so that was quite symbolic for me. And it did exactly what she says. It gave me resilience and even moved toward a eventual resolution in the face of suffering, which was very good. And it didn't give me happiness. It didn't presto changeo change my situation so that um, I was no longer depressed, but I was no longer depressed, and that was primarily because I gained this resilience. Um, let's see. All right. So Jung's insights bring effective aid for patients with severe pathologies and could be likened to the discovery of the cardiovascular system, a key event in human medicine. Therefore, applying the knowledge of the Red Book in psychiatry and psychotherapy is a burning urgency from my perspective. When help is available, why not accept it? One answer to this rhetorical question is that Jung's findings implicate a new level of consciousness, which triggers resistance because of the enormous ethical impact and responsibility in our lives from the moment we relate consciously with our psyche and shadow aspects within. As a result, one-sided power structures put up a fight, meaning painful sacrifices of unconscious identifications and of beloved habits must be endured. Only when this occurs can one finally learn to encounter the inner and outer other being with respect to an equal partner in the actual situation toward the unknown. Efforts toward this new dimension often prove an ordeal, at times a torment, and therefore seldom, if ever, are begun out of free will. This could also explain why this approach may well not be more implemented among treatment methods. Okay. Um, yeah. And so many gratuitous, unwarranted prejudices fill articles and books about analytical psychology. I won't enumerate or refute them here. Seeing patients connecting with their psyches, experiencing growth out of suffering, rediscovery of meaning and social relations, finding their paths in resonance with the world, I am filled with respect and gratitude to have had the chance to have been initiated into this journey of knowledge. It's more than a tool, it's a path. And I agree with that wholeheartedly. I guess I will say that in my earlier life, I was perhaps overly fascinated with women. And this has, from time to time, caused me problems in my life. And uh, the combination of things in my later life, um, which caused me to be resilient and have these effects, was that I had prostate cancer. And when I had prostate cancer, they irradiated me 43 times, cured my cancer, but it also cured me of my abiding interest in women. And so I can say that it might have been difficult to have the healing that I had without the intervention of my disease. Um, Good morning, Arcana, Deborah. This is interesting because sometimes you get thrown onto your own devices, absolutely, and can go into a spiral of despair. But the upside is you find your own core. Yeah, I agree with that. And thank you, Deborah, for being here. Deborah is in Australia, so it's, um, I guess, the middle of the night there now, and I appreciate you being here. Kathy says, that wasn't that long ago, you wily dog. Yeah, well, the scene in what I can say, and I look, I said something that's came to mind, and um, it's it's not that I wasn't able to control it, but um, I have had two long-term marriages that were mostly successful. The first one gave me three daughters, and the second one has lasted over 40 years now. Um, so I was not in in the Epstein League or anything like that, but I think you know men have a libido, and the libido in that case, I mean, for Jung, libido meant psychic energy. For Freud, it meant sexuality, and so that's a big difference between the two. And so all men have libido, all women have libido also, and I can just say that I've enjoyed my interaction with women throughout my life, and part of that is that I have a very uh, very obvious feminine side. It doesn't mean I don't think I'm a man. Of course I do, and still do, and I've never had any doubt about that. I served in the U.S. Marine Corps for 23 years, and if there's any organization that's manly, it's that. Uh, but um, but I also have had very deep relationships with many women over the years, and 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 sometimes my libido was a problem, and so um, I'm acknowledging that so for the men that hear this, because there's there way there are physical things that can happen that cause you to not be so attracted to women. So I've been attracted to women all my life, and I enjoy interacting with them. And I have many friends here who interact with me, even though I've never physically seen them, or I've seen them very briefly on a computer screen. But that's not life. That's uh, I got a uh, article that came to me this morning, which was called "Not Really Living," and it's about kids who get so screen sucked that they have never experienced life, and therefore their psyche doesn't develop properly, and they have to, you have to have the interactions, the losses and the gains of actual life in order for your psyche to develop properly. And if everything is done through a screen, then you're not in it. You're not in life, and therefore your psyche is not developing properly, it seems to me. And this is the point of this article. And so, um, I've had girl friends, women friends all my life, and in and I know that I have a feminine side, because if I didn't, I wouldn't be here. I'd be getting ready to watch the Super Bowl instead. And instead, I said to my wife tonight, we will be watching the halftime show to see what happens, but I'll be going to bed afterward. I could care less about the two teams and who wins. I suppose one of them will win. Um, and let's see. So, all I'm saying, Kathy, is that I no longer, it's no longer a problem that I have to deal with. And mind you, I founded a company that was in an industry that's mainly done by women, and so um, I had about 200 employees here in Annapolis, and I would say 190 of them were women. And so one learns how to appreciate women, uh, but not wanting to hop in bed with them, let's put it that way. And that's a company that I took public in 2005 based on my thinking things through on how things worked. And so yeah, and so all I'm saying is that here's an example of how the psyche will send you a symbol. In my case, the symbol of the light coming on me in the chapel. The light comes to that point in the chapel every day, a little bit, or it might be the next pew over because the sun moves 3 degrees or something every day. And or I don't know. The sun is always moving, and so it would be on a different place. It happened to be on the place that I needed it that particular day. Uh, and Deborah says it can be quite difficult for women who have a good sense of self to not become colonized by men, happy to have visitors and friendships. Yeah, I'm sure, and it works both ways. Um, and Kathy says, glad you grew up. We are people too, after all. Absolutely. And anyway, I'll tell you after this particular section, I'll tell you about a new project that I'll be working on, I hope. Um, it, it won't interfere with this, but in any case, reading on, analytical psychology reveals itself, in my experience, as an efficient method for shorter timelines for consultations, reduced costs for psychotherapy, fewer hospital admissions, and much shorter stays. In emergencies like ideations or actual attempts of suicide, the capacity of the psychiatrist to deal with depth psychodynamics proves vital, pragmatically helpful, and potentially transformative. Likewise, analytical psychology can be beneficial when leading or advising teams of family members, helpers, nurses, police, social workers, colleagues of other psychological disciplines, as well as in complex situations with health, labor, or disability insurances. Integrated knowledge through personal therapeutic processes furthers pragmatic and transforming support when practiced in good faith and humility. Reciprocal projections of both false as well as contaminating interactions in encounters can be more readily recognized, thereby potentially rendering conflictual situations more malleable and mutually satisfying. These terrains, while outside mainstream analytical psychology and psychoanalytic fields, are basic in integral healing processes among systems and people. Maintaining a split between psychiatric and psychoanalytic approaches would be contra, contraindicated, dangerous, and destructive. They are and need to remain interwoven for the sake of the individual. Okay, I want to go back and reread that paragraph because it seems to me it's extremely important and it raises the issue of people like first responders, nurses, etc. Okay, these terrains, while outside mainstream analytical psychology and psychoanalytic fields, are basic in integral healing processes among systems and people. Maintaining a split between psychiatric and psychoanalytic approaches would be contraindicated, dangerous, and destructive. They are and need to remain interwoven for the sake of the individual. Okay, so what I would say about this is that psychiatrists are medical doctors, and they have the ability to um, medicate, to give people prescriptions, and they need to understand the psychological side of what they're doing as well. And it's very important. And, I see it in my school all the time where children are given drugs because they have ADHD or they have oppositional uh, disability. And that's maybe not the best answer for them. And so we need people like you, like those that follow this YouTube channel regularly, who understand that all these things are interwoven. And so, for example, a friend of yours who might be a firefighter or a nurse or something, some other first responder duty, it seems to me that all those duties can be, can cause you real pain, real psychic pain, and uh, somebody has to be able to talk you through it. And, maybe usually it's a good friend or an experienced colleague, but it can be anybody, and it can be me talking to you through a screen, but it's not the same as a psychoanalyst and what they can do. And so Kathy says, I'm a demisexual. Attractiveness is to me based on the internal personal qualities and an emotional connection. Yeah, absolutely. And when I think of the relationship with my current wife, Debbie, um, I would say that Debbie is not a classic beauty, but uh, I actually, when I started to interact with her, I realized how beautiful her mind was and how it connected with me incredibly. And we were the first couple. I argue, and nobody's contradicted me yet, that we were the first couple to meet online and marry. And that occurred in 1985. So that's 10 years before the commercial internet, the World Wide Web, even got going, which wasn't until December of 1994. So we met through a email network, and we just communicated blindly through an email network for 4 months. And after 4 months, I left my wife of 17 years and moved in with Debbie, and I never turned back. And I felt after 4 months that I knew her better than I knew my wife of 17 years. It was an incredible experience. But anyway, so in the future, it would be advantageous and salutary to teach core findings of psychodynamics of the Red Book and in Jung's collected works at medical schools. In addition, similar efforts would be appropriate in transdisciplinarian exchanges, as well as in differentiated research in the field of analytical psychology and in combination with neuroscience. I think that would be a great idea, but oh, by the way, we have so many walls and so many silos that people live in that it's going to be a very long time before that happens efficiently. Another major revelation of the Red Book for psychiatry is the importance of emotions. These appear in the form of symbols like interrelating autonomous figures and situations and visions dreams, and in therapeutic relationship. Through inner work, they evolve toward more differentiated levels of feelings, awakening the capacity of self-reflection, responsibility, and compassion. Jung discovered how nuanced qualities of emotions influence symbols transporting information and energy for the transformation of the psyche in uh, growing felt sense. They occur within states of conflict or of disorientation as a compensatory function, generating meaning. They indicate possible support from implicit information in the psyche in moments of need and even total disequilibrium, even in moments of total disequilibrium. As such, they represent the actual transforming essence, status, and direction of development. Symbols demonstrate the intrinsic quality of life to link action and evolution. Life is connection. Modern psychiatry is either largely ignorant or devaluing of these facts. Neurosciences reveal the unsymbolized traumatic experience with a primitive core of unspeakable terror, intrusive ideation, and somatic sensations exist cordoned off deeply within the patient's psyche. These are predominantly unavailable to self-reflective processes and traditional talking cures. This screaming core of a wounded human being, often protected behind the semblance of a relatively well-functioning, adaptive, and personally relating persons, can only be reached through the engaged, warm reception and holding from a therapist with adequate self-awareness and good enough parenting skills, including the capacity to confront and set appropriate limits. In the co-creation of this furnace, the patient is initiated to relate with the psyche through visions and dreams. Um, and, um, I guess I came to this more or less naturally in terms of what my feelings were, because setting appropriate limits is something that I um, did have all through my life, including my interactions with women, of course, and otherwise I would have had uh, tumultuous marriages, which I typically did not, or they weren't about women. The tumults were not about women; they were about whether I would cut the grass. And um, so anyway, so you have to grow up, and setting limits is a way of growing up, and it's the way most people do it, I guess. But it's also where we can get ourselves in trouble if we don't pay attention to it. Um, let's see. So Deborah says, in the old days, a lot of courting would happen by correspondence. It makes sense. Yeah. And Jane Austen type of slow development of the situation rather than rushing it. Yeah, I only met my current wife 4 times before I left my future wife. Or yeah, before I left my first wife. And Deborah says, honestly, I've never thought too much about what I look like, but men would react to it, and I'd think, why are they acting so weird? One time I was at an art museum in London, and this guy was lecturing about Turner. He had a red shirt on and pink trousers in faded tones, and I was wearing exactly the same colors. I thought about following his group around. He turned out to be an art expert and fascinating person, but I never met him because I didn't take that chance. Interesting. Um, that's the kind of synchronicity that can end up getting you in huge trouble. So anyway, this holding furnace environment is able to, and so I would say that we all have this holding furnace anyway, and perhaps that's what causes depression at sometimes. In some cases, perhaps you work with a man who you're very attracted to, but oh, by the way, you're already married. Well, then that's a holding furnace environment where you say, "Yep, I think a lot of this guy, but I'm going to stick with my current marriage," and um, it can be painful. You know, the development of the psyche can be very painful, but ultimately, uh, we do it. We all do it one way or another, and in the old days, the answer was that I mean, we've been watching The Crown lately, and Queen Elizabeth II was terrible with her son Charles because she wouldn't appreciate um, his interests in his current wife as opposed to Diana, and she would just order him back into the marriage type thing, and Charles would say, "No, no, no, it's going to work," and 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 it was very painful for the royal family, of course, and and obviously breaking up the first marriage was very painful for a lot of people, but it was also the only thing that could be done in the circumstance. So anyway, okay, so the holding furnace environment. Okay, so think of our psyche as a holding furnace, and we got a lot of things cooking around in there, and some of them can send us in a tizzy. And this is where the church and morals and the Ten Commandments all came up. Obviously, the Ten Commandments look back to a time that was more than 3,000 years ago now. And so obviously those developed over a very long time before that. Um, and um, and they're aspirational, but they're very useful also. Uh, so Richard says, "Happy Marriage Week, everybody." What, they get 1 week a year, Richard? Beware the throb. It's no bueno. Uh, yes, that's all. These days, I don't want any drama. I'm over it. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so the holding furnace is able to promote repeated positive experiences of ongoing, emerging, transforming symbols in human mirroring, creating new neural connections over time, which build and rebuild attachments within the patient toward the self and with the other outside. This constructive process becomes visible and healing through the symbols in connection with feelings, i.e., differentiated emotions, which transform unconscious, implicit information into an explicit form experienced together in the analytic dyad of and in life. And I certainly, um, I I studied neurolinguistic programming at one time on my own as I do these things, and I learned about mirroring, for example, where you mirror the other person. If they raise a hand, you raise a mirroring hand, and that sort of thing. And I very consciously used it throughout my business career as a way to make people more comfortable with me. And it worked brilliantly. I was very pleased with it over time. And so, one has to realize that with everyone you encounter in both your business life, your working life, and your family life, is also interacting with you psychically. And so it's you, the conscious person, talking to you, the other person conscious, and the other person's unconscious, and the other unconscious talking to your unconscious and your consciousness, and so on. There's a whole lot of connections there just between two people. Um, and Richard says, 10 Commandments are what God writes in our hearts. Yes, thank goodness. Thank goodness, Richard. That's one way of thinking about it. And obviously, the way that the church uh, dealt with it over the years. The emotional link and the felt sense triggered through symbols and mirrored by the therapist are most effective in building up the personality, enabling wounds of the soul to heal. Metaphors activate multiple centers in the brain, which increase connectivity, as evidenced in contemporary research. Thus, assimilation as a mutual penetration of unconscious contents implicating the I and the unknown levels of the psyche can take place. Consciousness itself may be understood as connectivity established in the individual brain, even as consciousness establishes connectivity. Symbols, feelings, and transference experiences are intrinsic elements in building conscious connections. Through this process, internalization of a safe internal space, mobility of psychic energies, personal differentiation, and a felt connectivity can all occur. These developments validate the subject's ability to participate with the world and in her or his own becoming and own healing. So I wanted to mention my other projects that I am hoping we're going to get started. As we actually were going to start yesterday, and then it got delayed because my counterpart in the project um, had to deal with a family member who needed to go to urgent care because of a fall in our icy conditions here. Um, but what we're going to do is we are going to start to interpret the Bible and how it has been used um, by, I don't want to say all unscrupulous men, but it has been used to control people over thousands of years. And so, for example, we're going to begin with Proverbs 8, which is a proverb about the significance of wisdom. And it identifies wisdom as a feminine trait, not a masculine trait. And we have to remember that, there are translations in the Bible that refer to wisdom as Sophia, which is the Greek word for wisdom, and therefore, and philosophy is the love of Sophia, the love of wisdom. And so most people, including me until very recently, within the last 5 years, do not know about Proverbs 8 and the fact that wisdom is a feminine trait. And yet, going back to the time of Solomon, because the Proverbs come from the time of Solomon, so about 3,000 years ago, it was already recognized that wisdom was a feminine trait. And so I think that it's an amazingly powerful thing to talk about. And my counterpart in this exercise is a middle-aged Black woman who is very outspoken, and I'm looking forward to going through the Bible with her and talking about how some of our religions and some of our sects, sects, are misguiding people, and what we have to think, what we should be thinking about in the Bible, because while the Bible is true, and I agree that it's true, and I'll accept that it's 100% true, it has been, the meaning of it has been twisted over millennia in such a way that it's almost not recognizable in a lot of religions today. So anyway, so Enbach says repentance also takes place in the heart. Feeling regret is the same as repentance. Yes, okay. And Snowman says, oh, that sounds fun, Archifinus. Isn't it wonderful? Shady stuff happening at the top. Real malignity, so I wouldn't say wonderful. I'm not sure what we're talking about now. Feeling regret and guilt is a precursor to repentance. Yes, true. And you don't need a confessional to feel the repentance. It's been happening a long time, though. Being finally exposed is a good thing, right? Yes. I mean, finally, we're talking about this. Finally, we're talking about all these things related to psychology. We're trying to clear the air as between Freud and Jung, for example, and point out that, Freud was in there first in the psyche and toward the unconscious, and deserves great credit for having figured that out in the middle of the 19th century. And let's see. So Enbach says, alchemize guilt into remorse, alchemize grief into relief, repentant, and then Richard says, repentance in the Old Testament always involved sacrifice of something. And our Enbach says, our tears will wash away our sins. Yeah. So Deborah is saying to Kathy, because it must develop further and it can become twisted into bitterness, etc. To Kathy to repent of her. So I think one of the key things to remember is that we're going through individuation throughout life. It's not something that you say one and done. Um, it it happens throughout life, and if you understand that, it seems to me you're better off because then you can sort of deal with your own psyche better, it seems to me. Um, and, and Richard points out that you need to sacrifice something. And yeah, often that's true. And so what happens after a tear falls and another one forms to replace it? Geez, I don't know. That's a how many angels on the head of a pin question. Um, Richard says, "My God bears the wounds of human judgment." Yep. Um, and Deborah, yes, there must be recognition of what it is that's happened and to atone for it somehow, not just I feel sad. Yeah, right. You have to, and atoning for it doesn't mean um, taking a drug, which would simply blot it out until you stop taking the drug and then it's back again. Um, so anyway, okay, I'm going to read on. We have, let me see how far. Well, we only have 4 more pages to go, so not too bad. Okay, the treasure of the Red Book in our time and beyond, human love and humility. Unfolding love and humility within the psyche convey the specific qualities that make us human. Jung's process in the Red Book reveals the relational essence of the psyche, rejected in the materialistic spirit of the times because it is foreign, other, and not yet conscious. The evolving encounter with psyche is the fruit of a personal developing relationship of love with the soul. A prerequisite is a long, detailed work with the shadow and other autonomous complexes in order to let go and be freed from previous attitudes of the I and its claims to power. The insight of the limitation of the I leads toward a process of humility and a lively felt resonance with the whole. The I becomes conscious of contents and context through love and growing understanding, especially emotions in connection with relative capacities of thinking and intuition evolve together in the direction of a differentiated, refined sensibility, even vulnerability, crucial for further growth of the conscious relation among human soul and life, thriving in dialogue with and through love. In this love, opposites are present and accepted, linked to an increased relation with and deepened insight of the self, progressively bonding with the inner world through felt experience intensifies, creating an opening toward the numinous, archetypal levels of the psyche, and equally importantly, an acceptance to the banal and painful sides of life as well. A fortified, reconstituted I is necessary in the developing maturational stages of this global differentiated feeling state, impregnating feelings within the I as in the beings of the visions and their taming, organize the outcome of the past, the ways to come, their meaning and boundaries. Okay, I just want to remind you that the I in this book and in the Red Book is the Jung's, it's Jung himself in the visions. And so when Jung himself appears in the visions, it's Jung's ego interacting with something that's in his psyche. So when the term I is used, it's not the ego of Jung the man, it's the ego of this situation in the psyche. So I'm not sure if I'm clear about that, but I wanted to try anyway. Through the quantum leaps, a fortified, reconstituted I is necessary in the developing maturational stages of this global differentiated feeling state, impregnating feelings within the I, as in the beings of the visions and their taming, organize the outcome of the past, the ways to come, their meaning and boundaries. Through the quantum leaps of humility and process, feeling comes into position to create access to the religious function of the psyche, which Jung saw as a capacity through which the numinous is acknowledged with consciousness, respect, and freedom. Time and again, recognition, detachment, and transcending of the archetypal aspects with their progressive effectivity is possible, and through this, an opening toward further levels of consciousness. This is why Jung was adamant that differentiating experiences of relationship can only be met and integrated when the capacity for human love stays with humans, meaning cultivating an attitude and space of deliberate invitation to all of life, a deeper dimension of hospitality. A prime example can be found in the final passage of the Red Book concerning the Garden of Bacchus and Philemon, a sacred container of opposites, neither ruled by the devil nor possessed by Jesus Christ, a temenos sacred space. It is where one greets and meets all that may visit one in life. So Chad asks what text we're reading from Jung's Red Book for Our Time, Searching for Soul Under Postmodern Conditions. And we're in volume 4. It's a 5-volume set. This is edited by Mary Stein and Thomas Arst, and we're reading an essay entitled The Burning Urgency of Psychodynamic Discoveries in the Red Book for Psychiatry and Psychotherapy, a key for healing resonance of soul, love, and life. Okay. So good night, Deborah. Thank you for being with us. Um, Psychoanalysis is apparently a hymen gets restored. I don't know how that happens. Similar to an angel getting its wings, probably because depth occurs soon after. I don't know what that's a reference to, but so Archetypes asks a question about Dinars, and out of context, I'm sorry, I just don't have a clue. What happened at the Virgin Islands, and is this irony? Um, Richard says, pray the sorrowful mysteries rosary with contemplation and repentance, and you will know Jesus and his story is true. Doing this was my enlightenment to Christ, and it was a most mysterious experience. There are 4 different rosaries. Most non-Catholics aren't aware of this. Okay, I'm not aware of it, Richard. Um, and so I'm glad to know it. Um, there are many malas. The Buddhists use malas, the Hindus use malas, which is what a rosary is a kind of mala, and the uh, Arabs use malas all the time. You very often see Arab businessmen carrying a mala and using it. Um, so anyway, okay. So through the quantum leaps of humility and process, feeling comes into position to create access to the religious function of the psyche, which Jung saw as a capacity through which the numinous is acknowledged with consciousness, respect, and freedom. Time and again, recognition, detachment, and transcending of the archetypal aspects with their possessive affectivity is possible, and through this, an opening toward further levels of consciousness. This is why Jung was adamant that differentiating experiences of relationships can only be met and integrated when the capacity for human love stays with humans, meaning cultivating an attitude and space of deliberate invitation to all of life, uh, a deeper dimension of hospitality. Um, you know, it's getting a little cold in my room here. Outside temperature is, wait for it, 18 degrees. Okay, we're not built for this down here in Maryland. So a prime example can be found in the final passage of the Red Book concerning the Garden of Bacchus and Philemon, a sacred container of opposites, neither ruled by the devil nor possessed by Jesus Christ. A temenos sacred space, it is where one greets and meets all that may visit one in life. That said, one must be neither naive nor over. Let's talk about Philemon and Bacchus for a moment. So, Philemon and Bacchus were humble and accepted the gods when they came in, um, and and that's the difference between most people. Most people wouldn't accept the gods, but they did, and therefore they live in happiness for generations. That said, what one must be neither naive nor overly bold toward dangers of psychic outbreak, even given a garden container. A caveat or warning of due prudence and extreme caution must accompany any admonition to open oneself to forces of the psyche. Resistance is to be respected, not only dissolved. Dialogue can be redemptive, but demonic possession can prove exceedingly difficult to exercise. The safe space of the adequate therapeutic vessel is a prerequisite, but no guarantee for both patient and psychiatrist or therapist, lest one or all involved succumb to grandiose illusions of strength uh, or overweening pride, which can prove equally destructive to the psychic contents emerging. Love untested is transformation unproven. Again, humility serves as a guide and solace along the way. Sorry, two more pages to go, but I need to take a short bio break and I need to get my jacket because I'm getting so cold. So I will be back. Anon. Ah, thank God. The trials and tribulations of modern life. In the old days, you would have had a fire in the fireplace and so on, but we don't do that anymore. So, so Richard says it's 1 degree in Buffalo today. I don't doubt it. I went to law school in Buffalo, so I know very well what it's like up there. I moved to the mid-Atlantic for very good reason. It's temperate most of the time, but the problem is when you have a really cold snap like this, and this is the first one in 10 years, our insulation and our heat pumps are not up to it. In Buffalo, you have good insulation typically, and you have furnaces, which is quite different. Okay. In this space of hospitality, one acknowledges fully that which brings lamentation and abomination, the gift of the worm. In opening oneself to this extreme, however, one needs also receptivity to the positive pull of an archetype. This is symbolically represented by the blue shade, Jesus Christ, brother of the worm, which offers the gift of beauty of suffering. Only this can one evolve beyond merely only thus can one evolve beyond merely enduring of suffering to the experience of its transformation as wisdom, the conscious capacity to understand the psychodynamics of the archetypes and consciously relating them with their ambivalent energetic poles can facilitate healing and metamorphosis. These represent the numinous awesome and awful beauty of Jung's findings. Within processes of humility and hospitality, acceptance and differentiation of the shadow can unfold. Previously split off handicapped soul parts are restored to greater functionality and health, reunited as essential elements within the whole of personality and with it and life. Consequently, okay, consequently, both can be seen as functions of communion too. At the same time, humility and hospitality also provide boundaries when encountering fusions of transference, countertransference dynamics. Thus, patient and therapist find protection against inflation through archetypal contents, enabling them at the same time to become a structuring scheme within the psyche. One finds one's rightful place, sometimes diminished, sometimes enhanced, according to the unique case and psychic circumstance. Through expanding humility within, one tends to feel less self-righteous, less justified to condemn, accuse, or demand revenge as recompense. Qualities of responsiveness, solidarity, and responsibility within the and toward the soul develop space, building an awareness network over time, helping one to outgrow extreme discomfort and intolerable suffering. This enhances enormously the efficacy of a therapeutic process of analytical psychology and the pragmatic integration in life. Analytical psychology has an essential role, but only if unconscious levels of the psyche are considered, because humankind both derives from this source and is driven thereby toward destruction and creation alike. The outcome depends less upon whim or whim of arbitrary fate than upon whether or how this reality is denied or squarely, humbly confronted. Rather than mere tools, the processes initiated in the Red Book can be seen instead as the necessary toll at the border of authenticity and depth, meaning the transformation. Sorry. Necessary toll at the border of authenticity and depth, meaning, and transformation of consciousness. For myself, the most profound treasure of the Red Book is the opening of the human heart, the possibility for a conscious and mutually engaged human relationship with soul and life, whereby previous and future developments will be embraced by a new dimension of feeling consciously based on the conjunction of opposites, as well as the confrontation with and differentiation of shadow. Knowledge and experience of the humility process, along with the differentiation of feeling in the therapeutic encounter, which results, can initiate one to knowledge through love. For Hildegard von Bingen, cognitio amoris, the way of loving cognition, offered the only true knowledge of transformation and healing. Accordingly, the dark side of the self, which itself wants to become human, is acknowledged and can do varying degrees, and to varying degrees be affirmed and embodied within oneself. Only through the human heart related with soul can one find access to this magnitude of meaning. The therapeutic value of Jung's findings and the Red Book lies in opening the gate to the source of healing toward levels of consciousness capable of feeling, capable of accepting both constructive and destructive dimensions, realizing our qualities and limits as humans, as well as realizing our capacities to serve life, our own soul's needs, and others. Humility is the memento for the human species that our understanding is always incomplete. It is the reminder that insofar as we exist, we are embedded in a living web of being, where we are connected through relatedness and interdependent development with the whole of life. Okay, so that concludes this wonderful excuse me, this wonderful essay written something's got me. Heike Weis Hyder was the author of that wonderful essay that we've been working on for like 6 weeks. Next week, we will be reading Jung's Red Book as a healing symbol for our time, and this is by Maria Helena R. Mandacaru Guerra. And so that's for another time. She's positing that the whole Red Book is a symbol, and I concur with that, except that more people have to be exposed to the Red Book, and I've read it 3 times online and worked with people on it. I read it twice online on this channel and once with commentary in the advanced reading group. And I did it once with and once without commentary here. So you don't need to own a Red Book if you're in a country where you can't get it or it's banned. You can actually just go to the homepage of this YouTube channel and find my Red Book readings, and you can read every word of it. So Richard says that Philemon and Bacchus are forever trapped in the lower earth sphere, Hades, the underworld. Well, Richard, I would say that the lower earth sphere is the psyche and it's the unconscious. And so, yes, they're always with the unconscious, and that would be the lower earth sphere. Um, yeah. And Richard says Hildegard von Bingen was a nun with mystical experiences. She wrote bizarre but beautiful music, very sensual. And, um, so as a nun, she was not experiencing sexuality directly, so she was sublimating that within her music, apparently. Um, and so Richard says something I just said I took out of context. I don't know what you mean by that, Richard. I mean, which thing did I take out of context? And anyway, it's good to have you all here. I hope everybody's staying warm. I'm now warming up a little bit thanks to my jacket. It's been a cold day. Um, so, as far as my other project, my biblical project, um, I would urge you to look back on this YouTube channel from time to time, and you may see it in the most recent things that I've posted. We may not get to it now until next weekend before we start because of this other person's needing to go to urgent care. So we'll see. And Chad asks, by the way, is there a digital copy of The Stone Speaks in the Dropbox? Since I'm not very familiar with The Stone Speaks, I would have to say no, that there is not. Not to say that it isn't somewhere, and not to say that it isn't a wonderful book. Um, yeah, Kathy says chat requires even more clarity than verbal uh, conversations. Yes, indeed, I agree with that entirely. And you can say things that sound um, very strident on chat that you can clean up in real life. Okay, so Richard says uh, Hildegard von Bingen, being a nun, was united to Christ, a mystical marriage. Um, yeah, fine. I don't dispute that in terms of the church's teaching on that. And Yeah. So, yeah, Richard, we're just trying to understand your position, and I don't dispute your position, and I do understand that symbolically, a nun marries Christ. Uh, if we think about it psychologically, it means that a nun uh, does connect with the unconscious, and and that part of the unconscious that Christ is also a symbol of. And if you want to know more about Christ as a symbol of the self, um, you can read chapter 5 of Ion, which, I admit that even I had difficulty accepting at the beginning. I mean, when I received my copy of Ion, uh, and the title of it is Christ as a Symbol of the Self, I said, wait a minute, are you talking about the Son of God? And um, the answer is yes. He was talking about that, but you have to understand what he meant by God. And so Kathy says, I'm no nun, but yet Christ is the only husband I've ever had. Well, that's wonderful. I'm sure that what that means to you is extremely complex over your lifetime. So I wouldn't venture to comment on it briefly here. Um, and Chad says, for my information, the stone speaks about the stone he carved on each side. Okay, that's very interesting. And I can put back in, um, let's see, how do I do this? I can put back in my background the stone of which we speak here so people know what we're talking about. So here's the stone. And I need to lean over to get out of the way. I guess I don't have a very good copy of it here in terms of um, what we're talking about. But the stone is something that Jung did when he was 75, more power to him, that he was able to carve this stone so thoroughly. Um, I didn't have the energy to take on stone carving when I was 75, that's for sure. And I sure don't have it now. But but Jung was building another part of Bollingen, which is the home, his sort of retreat house that he went to, um, and the the stone masons had delivered a cubical cubical stone, basically that was the wrong size. And Jung said, no, that's my stone. I want that stone. I'm going to keep it. And so, anyway, yes, I believe it's granite. Um, and it was from a stone quarry across Lake Geneva from Bollingen. And so Richard says, did Jung do it or his demons? Well, that's kind of a distinction without a difference. So I would have to say that at the time of his life, um, that he did it, it was certainly Jung doing it. Um, if he had had the urge to do it earlier, maybe not. And Kathy asks, has it been deciphered for his intentions? And the answer is yes, it has been fully translated. Um, it has, um, I guess I'll put it back up here again for a moment. Um, okay, so it has various sayings on it. Some of them are in Greek, some of them are in Latin, some of them are in symbology, like the moon, um, and um, and like the homunculus, uh, who is there, and he represents Jung himself, the divine child going through life, I believe. And so all of that, I've come across it. I can't just tell you off the top of the head where it is, but if you look in volume 18 of I'm sorry, in volumes 19 and 20 of the collected works, which are all an index of the collected works. It takes 2 volumes to just do that. Um, or if the collected works are in the Dropbox, and the electronic version of them is. So if you go in there, um, you can just do a word search within the index and find about the stone and what it says. Yeah, I guess they're astrological glyphs. Kathy, I don't really know. I'm not well versed in that area. And she asks, can we study that here for a week? Um, yeah, probably would require more than a week, and it won't be soon because I would need to refresh my own memory about it. Um, and Chad says there's an interview on YouTube where he talks about it. Yeah. Um, I think I recall that there is now. Um, I'm just saying it would have to be during my summer vacation from my job as a public school teacher now, as most people don't realize that when I took on public school teaching when I was 75 years old, and I'm still doing it, and it hasn't killed me yet, but it's a few times it's tried. And so, anyway, I guess I'm going to wrap up for today, and next week we will go on with this new essay, and it's entitled "The Red Book as a Healing Symbol for Our Time," and it's by Maria Guerra. So I look forward to seeing you all then, and look for my other series sometime in the near future. It's going to be on this YouTube channel. I don't know if that's where it's going to stay, but that's where it's going to start. So peace. Have a nice